everyone, it's Becky here. So today my parents and I made a very spontaneous decision to travel to Victoria for 2 days. And here we are loading onto the ferry. Yeah, so the ferry is huge, carrying so many vehicles and passengers. Here I am, sitting nice and comfortable here at the passenger area, looking outside. Yeah, so it's a peaceful day. We're getting a lot of rain this spring here in Vancouver, but today is good. At least it's not raining. And Dudu is coming along with us in a cage. The views outside are always very enjoyable. Let's check on Dudu. I think he's feeling very uncertain. And this is not his first time taking the ferry. He first got on the ferry he was a kitten almost 2 years ago. Yeah, so after sitting and looking outside for a little bit, I decided to do 2 little sketches. And here is Dudu wondering about where are we going? Yeah, so here's my quick sketches of the views outside the ferry windows. Each took about 15 minutes. And we are disembarking the ferry boat. And our first stop is going to be the University of Victoria, where I studied for 4 years for my Bachelor of Fine Arts. From 2010 to 2014, we're getting into the city now. We're stopping at the Fairway Market, where I used to go grocery shopping every week as a student. It's a great memory. And Dudu is actually not having that much appetite because he's outside, away from home, and we're getting closer to the university now. And spring is arriving in Victoria. I see a lot of trees are blooming. Here we are by the entrance, entering the University of Victoria. And getting closer to the Fine Arts building now, we see a lot of cherry blossoms in full bloom. This is the peak season of the early cherry blossoms. It's so nice to walk around campus again. This area close to the library. And I used to wander around this area pretty much every single day as a student for 4 years. And everything looks pretty much the same as like over 10 years ago. And yeah, it feels like traveling back in time. Here I am outside the McLaurin building where I had my art education classes in here. Yeah, so this building is the Education Department of University of Victoria. There are a lot of cherry blossoms surrounding it. Yeah, and there's some more cherry blossoms in the courtyard of McLaurin building. And here I am sitting down on the lawn outside McLaurin building and the Human and Social Development building. And our car is parked close by. Today is Sunday, so parking is free on campus. So when we're traveling with family and friends, we can't stay for so long. So I think I've got 30 minutes to spend on this sketch. I just drew a rectangular frame and using a pencil to do a very quick layout, making sure I include everything I want to include. So starting to draw this first tree here pretty close to me, drawing the trunk and the major branches, a lamp post beside it on the left, and expanding these larger branches into thinner branches and twigs to form the shape of the canopy. Drawing some looser foliage forms like grass and shrubberies, the curb, below the tree. Now I'm starting to draw the contour outline of that parked car, the SUV, and installing the wheels, and very quick doodles for the pattern of the wheels, rear lights, side window, and the mirror, shading in some of the window panels with solid brown ink, and the other wheel on the other side. Yeah, and I don't stress so much on drawing cars. I just go ahead and get them done. Same idea for the next car, which is easier. Half of it is covered up by the car in the front. Rear window, rear lights, and shaded windows on the side. Now, moving on to loosely drawing the canopies of the cherry trees a little more far away. And they seem like smaller because they're more far away. Because the cherry blossoms are so light and fluffy, they don't have very solid contour outlines for these trees' canopies. So I'm keeping my hand pressure very gentle, drawing the clusters, keeping my strokes quite minimal and light. Adding more trees as I see on that horizontal line, that electricity box, a bush with some texture, and another tree behind it. Keeping the canopy's contour outline very gentle and loose. Now I'm drawing the two columns, and then these frames on the human and social development building. And I think it has about like 3 floors. Just tracing out these cube shapes that I see, and then adding on the big windows for the classrooms. Because I'm putting my sketchbook on my lap to draw, as you can see, my lines are kind of wonky, but I like the wonky characters, making the buildings and the trees look more interesting. This is the parking meter, and some more shrubberies around. Adding some more details for the university building. Yeah, there are a lot of shrubberies surrounding it. And some evergreens in the distance. And maple trees without leaves yet. This one is like a very tall evergreen. Yeah, adding some more horizontal lines to show distant lawns and walkways. And now I want to draw 2 people passing by. It's nice to add people to an urban landscape to show that, this place is very reasonable, inhabited by humans. And now it's time to add on watercolors. And I want to introduce you very quickly to my brand new little travel palette from Art Toolkit, and I filled it with my own Daniel Smith watercolors from the tubes. Okay, so now I want to start painting the canopies of the cherry trees, mixing quinacridone rose and cadmium red. Diluting the color mixture with a bit of water, so it's a very light tone of pink. I'm also mixing in a tiny bit of yellow ochre to show the sunshine dancing on the flowers. So it's more than just pink. There's also a little bit of yellow ochre, and the yellow ochre is super diluted with a lot of water. Okay, and use very bold and chunky brush marks to paint the flower clusters. Now the next tree, same recipe. And I think it's very important to paint these cherry blossoms, starting with a very light tone of pink for the first layer. If you start using very intense pink already in the first layer, it's very hard to make the flowers look fluffy and light. And in the world of watercolors, we don't need to mix white into red to get pink. Now, I'm punching on a little bit of stronger mixture of quinacridone rose and cadmium red for the lower half of each tree's canopy to suggest a bit of volume. But I'm not painting all the way to the top for this mid-tone. Same for the other trees, just a bit on the bottom half. And now it's time to paint the lawn areas. Now I'm mixing yellow-green with yellow ochre for the distant foliage. illuminated by the late afternoon sunshine, there's a very high ratio of yellow ochre. I'm also mixing yellow ochre into Hooker's green for a bit of color variation. Grabbing some pure Hooker's green to shade the bottom of these foliage clusters. Yeah, and I love how these cooler greens are in contrast with the warm colors of pinks in the front. And I'm going to use the same system of greens to paint the other shrubberies. Very diluted yellow-green for that glowing tree, germinating some new leaves. And yeah, I think there's another cherry tree tucked in between and behind. Adding these loose and free brush marks. And I also think it's pretty important to use a large, juicy paintbrush to get the fluid, chunky marks for the cherry blossoms for painting most of these things. And for the sky, I'm using manganese blue. Yeah, pure manganese blue and slightly diagonal brush marks to show the dome shape of the sky. And the sky blue is also a beautiful contrasting color to help the cherry blossoms look brighter. Now, I just glazed the ground area with super diluted yellow ochre to show that the sun is kissing the ground, mixing yellow ochre with orange for the first layer of the university building, which is the Human and Social Development Building. And now I want to paint the bushes using leftover yellow orange, some leftover green, and Hooker's green with yellow ochre. And now it's time to paint some tree trunks. I just mixed Hooker's green with burnt sienna, and then a bit more concentrated burnt sienna, using the few hair on my brush tip to paint the smaller branches and the trunks far away, playing with a bit of value transition so the tree trunks and branches are really glowing. Using raw umber to shade the branches a little bit. And then, keep grabbing some burnt sienna to paint the bottom of these bushes, showing soil. A bit of shading, a bit more heavier shading for the bottom bit of these bushes. The key is to use less watery greens. Mixing some cobalt blue to intensify the shade of green. And this very intense shade of green is very nice, touching the edges of the cars and the lawns. So to suggest volume of anything, you have to use 2 or more tones of those similar colors, like different levels of greens, different levels of red pinks. And using mostly Hooker's green mixed with yellow ochre to paint the distant trees. Mixing cadmium red with orange and a little bit of burnt sienna to paint the next layer for the university building. Yeah, so always think about color variation when you're painting anything, including a seemingly dull building. Using cobalt blue and imperial purple to add those mysteriously shaded spots behind. And then using the same 2 colors mixture to paint the shadows on the parking lot, underneath the cars, And white cars are never perfect paper white, so I'm continuing to use cobalt blue and imperial purple to shade the white car. And now I want to shade the cherry blossoms even further by mixing imperial purple into the quinacridone rose and red mixture. Using these bold, chunky brush marks, yeah, just like before, to focus on shading just the bottom 50% of each tree, not too much. Yeah, and each lively brush mark is my expression, and they all look kind of different from one another. Painting the shadow for the two people, the bushes in thinner brush marks, shadow landing on the lawn. Yeah, that's very much it. Here's my 30-minute sketch of the cherry blossoms. And these faster and more spontaneous sketches are actually fun to do. And these super fluffy trees are just beautiful, right? Now I just crossed the street to visit my old home base, the Visual Arts building. And there is the cherry tree guarding the Visual Arts building. Now we're leaving campus to go to our next stop. And we're getting ready to check in at our hotel because it's 4:30 now. Enjoying more cherry blossoms along the way. But the sky is getting very cloudy now. After checking in at our air hotel, we went down to Dallas Road and there's this Clover's Point Park. And I managed to do like a quick 15-minute sketch. And I couldn't film because it was too windy and cold. So here's my quick 15-minute ink and watercolor sketch of the moody view of the sky, the layers of mountains merging into one, and the sea. And it's quite chilly now, and we don't want to stay outside for too long. So now we're driving to a restaurant for dinner. And some more amazing cherry blossoms. And I just love the quiet, serene character of the neighborhoods of Victoria. It's quite different from the neighborhoods of Vancouver. And here we are approaching this Japanese restaurant on Shakespeare Street. And this is the only restaurant and or cafe in this neighborhood. Very special. Let's go in. So my parents and I each got like a combo meal, which is very hearty, very fulfilling. And I think I got the chicken teriyaki dinner combo. And I want to sketch and paint the beautiful warm colors of the food below the cold landscape above. This is a nice way to compose. So I'm just using pencil to roughly sketch out the bowls and the dishes, making sure I'm able to include everything. Yeah, on the bottom bit of the page and the bamboo tray. Okay, so I'm going to start drawing the big bowl holding the teriyaki chicken and vegetables and rice, starting with the ellipse shape of the bowl's opening, the brim using more gentle lines, and the body of the bowl in a crescent shape. Now I'm tracing out this abstract shape, which is the tail of a fish. Yeah, so Japanese people, they love eating fish. And another little dish with some little pickled veggies in there. The chopsticks. And the contour outline of the rectangular bamboo tray. And a square dish holding another piece of pickled veggie. And the next little dish. And I think it's fried mashed pumpkin, which is really delicious and crispy. And yeah, this is the little bowl holding the miso soup. The liquid line and the miso sinking down on the bottom, the body of the bowl, and the spoon. So Japanese food, they are so visually appealing and they're so suitable for drawing and painting. Now I'm drawing these pieces of fried yam and fried zucchini, I think, yeah. And the design of that bowl holding the tempura is very special. The opening is kind of like a hexagon. And another little bowl holding the dipping sauce, adding on the brim for the bamboo tray. Yeah, so me and many other urban sketchers, they love sketching food and drinks because we believe food and drinks are a pretty essential part of our life context. And it's nice to have warm food after sitting down on the bench at Clover Point and sketching for 15 minutes. Now I'm just drawing the organic shapes of the cabbage, slices, and the bits of chicken. The rice is very much all covered up by the teriyaki cabbage and chicken on the bottom. Yeah. And I'm drawing very quickly before the food gets cold. Yeah, as always, I don't sacrifice my food just for a sketch. And yeah, the drawing is almost there, just adding some accentuations here and there. Now I want to include my cup of hot rooibos tea. Because I've been drawing hundreds, probably thousands of cups over the past 12 years since I started art journaling, I'm very used to drawing cups and just getting it done super quickly. You can always check out my other videos to see how I sketch cups of tea and coffee and other drinks. Here I am now punching on the warm colors using the Winsor & Newton watercolors, but in a different travel palette. And I don't remember the name of the brand, but I think you can find it easily on Amazon by searching for a mini travel watercolor palette. So most of these items has like a common color of muted yellow, which I'm using yellow ochre mixed with a little bit of Indian yellow, a little bit diluted for these items. I also mixed a little bit of burnt sienna with yellow ochre for some yellow-brown things like that chicken over there. I cleaned my brush to grab some spring green mixed with the leftover yellow to paint the chopped cabbage pieces. And switching to my medium tip water brush to grab mostly burnt sienna with a tiny bit of yellow ochre. This time less watery to suggest the saucy surfaces on these ingredients. So teriyaki sauce is very much like sweet soybean sauce. I also grabbed some pure orange and red to paint the bits of carrots. Now mixing orange, yellow ochre, and burnt sienna, using a fairly diluted version of this color to paint the bamboo tray, and the rooibos tea. So a lot of food items, same for colors in nature. They could look pretty similar to one another. And grabbing some leftover yellow-orange and orange-brown for painting the tempura pieces. Now, mixing cobalt blue with imperial purple to paint the black bowl. And yeah, keep using the same dark gray with a bit of green mixed in there. So there's a bit of variation of gray to paint the large bowl holding the rice and teriyaki chicken and veggies. So as you can see, I'm playing with cobalt blue, imperial purple, and the leftover green in the palette. A lot of these vessels are white, gray, and black, or dark indigo. And I'm leaving some little thin streaks paper white untouched to show the shiny areas of ceramic surfaces. And now I'm making my transition from painting the mid-tones to darker tones. So the darker tones on food items is covering like a small ratio on these surfaces. If the dark tones, like the browns, are like way too much, the food is gonna look kind of old or overcooked. So just a moderate amount. So I like to keep my yellow browns, orange browns, those warmer tones more dominant than the colder browns. And if there's too much colder tones or very intense shades in any painting, I think that painting would look not really attractive, right? And then using leftover indigo to paint the chopsticks. There are also other gray areas and yellow, orange, orange-brown parts to paint. And the shadows of these dishes are actually fun to paint, landing on the bottom left. Yeah, so shadows can add so much more drama to a still life set and also sceneries. It's very ideal to paint on a bright sunny day or with the help of a lamp when you're painting still life. And these cold shadow colors are adding a good balance with the warm food items. They're also echoing with the colors of the mountains in the sketch above. Now I'm using, still imperial purple at a higher ratio, with a cobalt blue to paint that white cup holding my rooibos tea. And don't forget the shadow for the bamboo tray. I think all the shadows are landing on the left. And then shade the brim, the handle of the cup, just a little bit. And I'm having a last look and adding on some final polish, some more intense orange browns for the deep fried food and the fish. Yeah. Dark sepia for the tail of the fish. Yeah, and that's very much it. It's time to enjoy my dinner finally. And yeah, the food is still warm, so no worries. And stay tuned for my next video for places that I went to and sketches that I did on day 2 in Victoria in spring 2025. Yeah, including to do. Bye everyone and take care.